Hey guys, welcome, and girls, welcome back to the channel. It's a quiet Saturday morning in the neighborhood. Ain't much going on around here. Everybody seems like they're still inside, so that's good. We're going to be doing some maintenance on the Jeep today, doing an oil and filter change, and we're going to be doing a transmission filter and fluid change, hopefully, if all goes well. So we are glad that you're watching, and we're like right at we're like 994 subscribers. So if you could hit the like button and the subscribe button, that would help us out. We appreciate it. So let's get into today's video, and we'll see what we can get done. Alright, I know there's probably 1,000 videos out there on this oil and filter change on a 2014 Jeep Wrangler. But if you don't know, there's a cap that this filter presses into. So this is the end of the filter that goes down into the housing. This is the end of the filter that goes into the cap. So essentially, if you look down in that cap, you can see that center right there. That goes in this large hole in that filter. And then if you look into the actual engine compartment here, right in here, you can see that hole. That's where you slide the filter down in. One thing I will say is that on this cap here, there's an O-ring, and you should get a new O-ring with your new filter. You always want to replace that. So I'm going to get the new filter, and we'll get that new O-ring put on, get the filter pushed into the housing, and then we'll get it assembled into the engine. Alright, so the filter that I'm using is a Wix it's a WL10010. Right there. I've always used Wix filters. I think that they're probably the best filters that are out there. I'm really not a fan of these types of filters. I like the spin-ons better. And I think they make a housing that you can actually put into this unit here, this Jeep, that allows you to use more of a spin-on type filter. But anyway, it'll come with a little bag and some instructions. It shows you on that paper how to actually replace the O-ring and which way the cap actually goes on the filter. But anyway, we're going to clean this housing up here and get that O-ring off, and we'll get the new one slid on. So I just took a screwdriver, and I was able to get that O-ring just kind of worked off of there, and I got the new one here, and I'm just going to slide that over the housing, get it down into, you can see there's a groove. Let me pull this back a little. Anyway, there's threads right on there. You can kind of see where I'm holding the O-ring. Those are all threads. And then right down here, there's a single smooth groove. You just work that O-ring in there, and that's how it should look. You can kind of see from the side there, the O-ring's right there in that groove, and then this is all thread. And once you get that, then you can take your filter and just snap it in there, and it doesn't really take much to push it in there, just a little bit. As long as it's straight to the housing, you're good. And then once you get that, then basically you just take your filter and you slide it down into that housing and start to thread it in. And shame on me, I don't have the socket for this. So unfortunately I just use a big crescent wrench, but I tighten this in until it stops, and then I just take this big crescent wrench and I just give it a little bit. You don't want to break it. And then of course I check it when I'm running the engine after the oil is changed to make sure that, that it's not leaking. But that's just the change in the filter. Now we're going to get underneath. I've already drained the oil, but I'll kind of show you that. And then hopefully it's done draining. We can throw the drain plug back in and get the fill in this thing. I got my little buddy with me today. What you doing, huh, buddy? Yeah, that's a good boy. Yeah, that's a good boy. Henry. My little buddy Henry. Sit down. Sit down. Good boy. Can you shake? Shake. Good boy. How about the other one? Good boy. He's a good boy. Alright, so your oil pan has one plug on the back of it there, you can see. And it's still dripping just a little bit. I got my light shining right on that, the hole where in the pan there. But anyway, pretty straightforward. It's just one plug. Pull that out, oil drains out, and I usually let it drain a little extra just to make sure all the junk's out of there. But it's probably close enough now. So we're going to throw that plug back in. Alright, so plug threaded back in. Throw a ratchet on it. And you don't want to go crazy with these. You just snug it. And make sure it's tight, but don't like put the torque of everything on it because you'll strip them out. So there it is. Back in. And I'm going to start putting oil in. Alright, we got all the oil put in, so just kind of wipe the cap down a little bit here. There's any junk on it. We'll put that back in. And I'm going to check the oil real quick. Make sure it is up on the dipstick where it needs to be. It should be. And it is. So we're good. And now the fun. We're gonna try to change the transmission fluid in this thing, drain the fluid without taking any out. I don't have like a evacuator or anything, so I'm gonna have to try to rig something up underneath that Jeep so that I don't get fluid everywhere. So to be continued here in just a minute. So looking at this transmission pan, you've got 6 Torx head bolts here. And it's a T30, so there's one here, one there, and you can barely see that one right back there. So there's on each side, 3 on each side, 6 total. So those got to come out. The problem is this transmission is leaning toward the back of the engine, or toward the back of the vehicle, and there's this big cross member here that's right underneath the back end of the transmission. So if I start to drain this, my fear is that all the fluid is going to want to just run everywhere back here. So I'm going to try to start loosening these bolts, and I don't know if it's going to work or not. I'm hoping I can get a few of them loose, like 4 of them loose, and then maybe get this like bin cover up in there and try to direct the fluid to my pan in the front here. I don't know. I'm going to see what happens, but I'm definitely not going to get covered in oil, so hopefully this works out well. Alright, so far so good. Basically I just loosened 2 bolts on the passenger side, like the forward 2 bolts, and then I started loosening the 2 forward bolts on the driver's side, and you can see it is draining, dripping just ever so slightly. So it's going to take a while to drain, but this is the cleaner way. So that way I ain't got to worry about getting oil all over the exhaust or transmission fluid all over the exhaust and this cross member and everywhere else. So we're just going to let it do its thing and we'll come back to it. So hopefully okay. The back 2 bolts on the pan are going to be kind of a pain to get to, and I'll kind of show you that when I get to that point, but it looks like it's going to be kind of painful. Well, things were going so well until they weren't. So I got a little bit of fluid on the floor. But the reason why is because the way that this is designed, this big cross member right here, there are literally 2 bolts on the back of the pan, and you can't really see them up in there, but I'll see if I can point to them. You can see the end of the screwdriver right here. You can see that, like right where that aluminum screwdriver tip is. So they're like directly above this cross member, and you can't get a ratchet in there. So I ended up taking basically a 1/4-inch wrench with a Torx bit, and that's how I was able to get those loose. Well, unfortunately, the pan still is full of, or not full, but still has some fluid in it. So when you go to pull that off of there, you end up with a bunch of fluid down your arms and everywhere. So it's kind of a mess. Anyway, I'm going to go ahead and clean up that magnet. It's got some stuff on it. Clean the pan. Pull the gasket off. I've got a new gasket that came with the filter, and then once I get all that cleaned up, the filter is still in the transmission. We'll pull that out, we'll check it out, make sure everything looks okay, and then we'll go ahead and throw the new filter in. So that's going to be the plan. Alright, pan's all cleaned up, magnet's all cleaned up. We'll put that back in the pan. So this would be back of the vehicle, front of the vehicle, and then I need to grab the gasket and put that on. The new filter comes sealed in a bag, and then you get a new pan gasket as well. And it looks like this can only go on one way, so basically just starting the gasket on the pan. Alright, and that's it. It's on there. So just make sure it's seated down all the way. And I'm going to crawl underneath there and kind of clean up some stuff, and then I'll swap out that filter. I'll show you that. It's a mess under here. So, let's see if I can get over here far enough. The filter is still on there. So I'm going to go ahead and pull that. There's probably going to be some fluid that's going to come out with it. Right in the face. This looks like the original filter. You notice on this filter there's a little tab right there you can see sticking down. That tab has to line up with a slot that's like right there. So now that I'm covered in transmission fluid again, I'm going to set this camera down here somewhere. This bag open. This is a mess under here. I'm just going to lube this O-ring up with a little bit of the old trans fluid from the housing here. And then basically line up that tab. Let's see if we get a good picture here. It's kind of hard to see, but right through there, there's that tab. Just find that slot, which is there, I believe. Right there. And then push on that filter. I'll have to set the camera down to get this. See if I can turn it here so you can see what's going on. Just push it up in there, and it just stops against the housing. So the filter itself is actually touching the transmission body here pretty much, inner part of the transmission. That's it, that's in there. So now that that's done, I'm going to try to wipe up some of this pan rail a little bit here. If I can. I don't know if I can get to it. It's kind of a pain to get to. There was one spot on here that kind of had some gunk on it from where, like, where the magnet was. Just kind of wipe that off a little. And that should be good. Now I just need to get the pan and get it pushed back up in there. And then be able to start tightening things up and getting fluid put in it. Alright, I put 5.5 quarts in. This thing is so difficult to read. I don't know if anybody else has had problems reading their dipstick on a Jeep, but it looks like it is way over full. But it looked like that before too, so I just go with what the book tells me for a fluid pan drop and filter change, which is 5.3 quarts. So that's the gist of it. Not too terrible to change the transmission fluid in these. I mean, it's kind of messy. I did make a mess under the Jeep, but I'll get that all cleaned up and take it out for a test drive and see how things go. Appreciate everybody watching, and please like and subscribe. Thank you.